what is the strongest argument for God's existence? That's what I'm going to share with you right now, or at least the argument that convinced me once and for all that God totally exists. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer here. I grew up in the church, and I've actually always believed in God my whole life. I never was a complete atheist or agnostic. I never denied the existence of God. But I did go through a period of serious questioning where I was faced with questions all throughout high school and when I went into the workplace from my friends who were atheists and agnostic. They were constantly hammering me about my faith, and they were presenting me with questions that I didn't really have the answer to. And throughout that time, there was a little voice in the back of my head telling me, well, what if you are wrong about this? What if you just believe this because that's how you grew up? And so there was a season of doubt where I was kind of wavering. I never fully said, okay, God doesn't exist. But I went through a few years there really questioning and really trying to figure out what it is I actually believe and why I believe it. I will say that throughout that time, I had questions that I didn't understand or didn't have the answer to, but there was always something in the back of my mind. There was always something deep down that knew God existed and was with me. And it felt to me like denying that would kind of be denying reality. Like I had been in prayer with God for a long period of time in my life, and I had seen him work in my life in ways that felt too hard to explain without there being a God. And I had that personal experience in my life. And so it felt disingenuous of me to say there was no God. But I was also dealing with these questions that are like, I don't have an answer for this. So just to give you a little disclaimer, it's not like I'm coming at this as a once atheist, now turned Christian. Although I will say I was 18 years old when I really, truly gave my life to Christ. I was not living for God at all before that in my life. And when I turned 18, I made a decision to completely follow Christ with my life and to get rid of the stuff that didn't honor him in my life. And it was ironically at that time when I got the most challenges from my friends who had been atheists for a while, and even friends who used to be Christian that had become atheist or agnostic. They were presenting me with these really difficult questions, and I thought they were well thought out questions that deserved good answers. I shouldn't say ironically, because I actually think that there's a reason for that. I think the moment that you get serious about serving God is the moment that the devil is going to attack you. It's the moment that the kingdom of darkness is really going to come after you, because they know that God wants to use you in your life for his glory, and they don't really like that very much. And so I think that was intentional. I also think it was, in many ways, I think it was from God, because that period of my life, I think, solidified the foundation upon which he has been building since. And I felt like my faith really grew then, because every single argument that I looked up just affirmed more and more deeply what I knew about God to be true. So there are plenty of great arguments for God's existence, and every single one of them has contributed toward strengthening and deepening my faith. But there is one in particular that felt like it just completely destroyed any chance or any opportunity of someone persuading me that atheism were true. When I came across this argument, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, this is it. This hits to the very core of why we even have this question in the first place. And that is the moral argument for God's existence. Because if we weren't created by God and we're just a result of some kind of blind, purposeless process that happened by chance over millions of years, then morality is just something that we've kind of concocted in our own heads, probably to gain power or wealth, or those seem to be the things that motivate human beings. So why wouldn't someone create morality to, tell someone they can't steal so that they could steal it for themselves? But there is something so central to human nature. We understand that there is right and wrong in the world. And when something wrong happens, we have physical reactions in our bodies. We can sense when right and wrong is happening. There's something that changes in us. And we look at that and we say, that's not right. Now, an evolutionist might hear that and say, well, that's just for survival. We have that instinct because we know that doing good is what benefits society. But there are so many reasons why that doesn't work. C.S. Lewis points this out in his book, Mere Christianity. If you saw someone being attacked by a lion, you would have three instincts. You would have one, either to run away, or two, to go help the person, but you would have a third one that would tell you that you should go help the person rather than run to save yourself. If survival of the fittest is true, then why wouldn't we all be wired to run away and save ourselves? And that wouldn't be wrong either. In fact, you should do that. Self-preservation, right? But we all know that that would not be the right thing to do. We all know that that is evil to leave someone else to suffer so that we can save ourselves. I think we understand this concept more powerfully when something really good happens rather than when something evil happens. We are so touched and moved by seeing people be kind to one another, by seeing people sacrifice themselves to help others. When that happens, there's something that touches the human soul in a way that we can't really understand. We just feel so, we look at that and we think, that is pure, that is right, that is good. Now, where does that come from if God doesn't exist? And if it's all just made up in our heads, that seems kind of counterintuitive to evolution, because in evolution, it's survival of the fittest. The stronger prevail and the weaker fail. The reason I say this argument explains why we're even having this discussion in the first place is if there is no right or wrong, or if right and wrong is just something that we have constructed socially or whatever it may be, then why are there atheists out there who are so passionate about trying to disprove that God exists? There are people out there who are genuinely infuriated. They think that religion is evil. They think that religion is what causes pain and suffering in the world. But why does it matter if there's pain and suffering in the world if there is no God and ultimately there is no meaning? I mean, if you really bring atheism out to its logical conclusion, in the end, nothing we do ever matters. At the end of the universe, there will just be nothing but dead stars and planets floating into the endless nothing for all eternity. At that point, will it ever matter what we did on this earth? Will it ever matter how hard you fought to try and get rid of religion? I mean, the sheer fact that you are motivated by something. And I think what that is that is your God-given sense of understanding about the moral law, and the enemy has used that to flip it and deceive you to support his kingdom rather than Christ's kingdom. Evil cannot create anything good. It can only take what God has made and pervert it. And that desire, that passion, that anger, that need to change something in the world, all that is God-given. All that is something God gave you to do something for his good in the world. And the enemy has used lies and deception to trick you and to use that for his side, to make you think that God is the enemy when he is actually the only one who is truly good. And I do want to make a quick distinction here because this is really important. I will hear atheists make the argument about absolute morality versus relative morality, and they'll say, well, morality is relative. It isn't absolute. For instance, you can kill someone in self-defense, but you can't kill someone out of cold blood. So you can't just say killing is wrong. But that completely misses the point of the argument. The point of the argument is there is an objective right and wrong. In other words, let's use the example given before. Someone kills someone out of cold blood, just for the heck of it. No reason at all. They just felt like killing someone. The question is that objectively wrong or not? Is it wrong whether the person thought it was right or not? And if there is, that must mean that there is a moral law, something that is outside of us. And it's also funny to me too, because a lot of times the biggest problems that atheists will have with the Bible, the ones that really bring out the emotion in atheists from what I've seen in my experience, are the moral issues that they have with God. They point to things like the judgment of the Canaanites, where God told the Israelites to go into Canaan and to kill everyone, even the women and children. And they look at that and they say, hey, how can a loving God do something like that? To which I want to know, well, what's wrong with that if there's no God? What's wrong with the Israelites just killing a bunch of people if there's no God? Why do you care so much? Why do you even have any kind of feeling towards that? And I could do a whole different video about why God killed the Canaanites and all that. And I think that has more to do with the problem of evil in the world and why does God allow evil? That's another big one to talk about. But for now, since we're talking about the moral argument, the question that the atheist has to answer is, why do we have this sense of right and wrong if there is no God? Where did that come from? I think it obviously came from God. It came from a being who determined right and wrong and put that into our hearts. And so the only way we can even understand what is right versus what is wrong is if there is a God, is if there's someone who gave that law, something outside of us entirely that we have no control over decides whether something is right or wrong. How could that come to be if we weren't created by God? If we were just created by some kind of blind, purposeless process? If that's true, there's no eternal consequences for our actions, and there's absolutely no reason why we should pursue anything other than self-pleasure. So anyways, that's the argument that convinced me once and for all that there absolutely is a God. I hope you found this video enjoyable. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.